Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the lecture part A of week number 10. And in the last lecture, we talk about the earthquake response spectra. That is a very important tool to find out the response of different structures against the strong ground motion produced by an earthquake. So, first of all, in that lecture, we talked about the strong ground motion and we defined that what is the difference between the earthquake ground motion and strong ground motion. So strong ground motion is the motion that can affect your structures and that is capable of producing significant damage to the structures. Then we talk about the response spectra, and before that, we talked about what is the Fourier spectra. We discussed it briefly, and then we talked about response spectra's basics. And later on, we talked about how the different structures can respond against the same kind of earthquake ground motion based on their dimensions and also based on their material and nature of the design. Then we talked about the spectral parameters, and those are actually spectral displacement, spectral velocity, spectral acceleration. So the same kind of parameters, those we use to measure the strong ground motion as an input motion, and same parameters we are going to use for the determination of the response of the structures. All right. So then we talked about how to construct the response spectrum, and later on we talked about what is the effect of damping on the response spectra. Then we talked about in detail about the typical response spectra signatures for different type of materials. So this is very important diagram that is actually based on the actual records related to the recording of the earthquake spectra on different type of natural materials. All right. So similarly, we talked about some other spectral parameters like the bracketed duration, corner period, number of equivalent uniform cycles, and then we talked about the predominant period and bandwidth. What is the difference between these two terminologies? And then we talked a little bit about the root mean square acceleration intensity, areas intensity, power and power spectra. These are the other ground motion parameters, and you can just remember their names. No need to go in the detail of these parameters. If you are interested, you can read them out from your textbook, and you can ask me questions related to this. All right. So then we talked about the velocity spectrum intensity and effective peak acceleration. And I also asked the question related to the time period of the earth embankment dams and concrete dams. Why the time period is more for the earth embankment dams as compared to the concrete dams? I guess only one person replied to this question, and his answer was almost okay. So definitely he will get some credit. So if you are not interested to ask such kind of questions, then it will be difficult for me to judge you using the online tools for your assessment. So the answer was because in earth-filled dams, it is earth-filled dams. We have broken material, we have boulders and all kind of natural material that is not consolidated. Okay, so if you don't have a material that is not consolidated, so if you have a material that is not consolidated as compared to the rock, then the time period of in that kind of material will be more for the earthquake strong ground motion. So concrete is just like a rock. So this is the reason why for the concrete dams, the time period will be less, right? As compared to the earth-filled dams that will be containing the broken pieces of rocks, sands, clays, and other kind of sediments and gravels. All right, then we define the effective peak acceleration, how we can get the effective peak acceleration. We already talked about that. And then we talked about the summary of the ground motion parameters. Those are discussed in the chapter 3 of your textbook. We talked about some of them, and some of the parameters we didn't discuss at this level. You are very welcome to discuss those things with me, those parameters with me, if you want to further study those parameters. Some of them are only amplitude parameters, some of them are frequency content parameters, some of them are duration parameters, and some of them are the combination of both, or some of them are the combination of all of three these parameters, these categories. All right, then we talked about the exercise, though that I guess you have already done now. So today we are going to talk about the predictive relationships. So this is our new topic for today, and this is the reference that is given on this slide. So predictive relationships for what? As we know that the ground motion parameters, those are already discussed. These are related to whatever the records we have, whatever the ground motion is already measured, right? So when now we need to predict, because if your site is not exactly at the seismic station, it is somewhere else, and it is at some distance from the seismic station, and also from the earthquake source. So it means whatever the time histories are available, those are actually recorded at the seismic stations. So what about the sites? Those are not at the same distance from the earthquake sources as the past records are measured on this at the seismic station locations. So for this, we need to predict. Sometimes our site may be closer to the earthquake source as compared to the seismic station. Sometimes our site may be uh, further away from the seismic station as compared to the with reference to the earthquake source. So we need to predict now. We need to predict the same kind of parameters. We need to know that what level of amplitude parameters will be there at our site. So this is how we need to predict. So if you remember, when an earthquake is triggered and vibrations are taken place at the epicenter, and those vibrations then travel along the surface of the earth to different other parts, right? And we know that when the distance is increasing, the ground vibrations will be getting decreased, right? The amplitude of the ground motion will be getting decreased with the distance. So this is a natural phenomenon, and there is a kind of attenuation that will be taking place because of this thing, right? So then we also need to see that if the magnitude is greater, it means that kind of vibration produced by that particular earthquake will be felt at a longer distance, right? So these things are actually the indicators how we are going to prepare the predictive relationships. To prepare the predictive relationships, we need to have the knowledge about the distance of your site from the epicenter of the earthquake. One thing. The second thing is you need to know what was the magnitude of that particular earthquake. So these two things are very important to develop the predictive relationships, right? All right, so these are the parameters those are used to predict the earthquake ground motion, like the amplitude parameters means we just need the peaks. Whatever is the peak, we need to know that about the ground acceleration, velocity or displacement. Then we have frequency content parameters. It means we need to know the frequency of the particular ground motion amplitude, right? Ground motion, you can ground motion, I mean the significant ground motion. So where the significant ground motion lies, we need to also know its time period or frequency. So then we need to know the duration parameters. So these are the same parameters those we have already talked about for the strong ground motion. Now we are going to talk about these kind of parameters, how we can predict these parameters based on the available history of some areas seismicity, and also related to the other parameters those influence the strong ground motion. So here, first of all, we need to know the effect of magnitude. What is the influence of magnitude on the earthquake ground motion? We already know that if the magnitude is greater, it means the signal or the recording of the earthquake ground motion will be strong, or the amplitude of the ground motion will be strong, and the duration will be more, right? For example, these are the recorded time histories. You see that if the magnitude is 3.1, you see how tiny is the ground motion. So this is not strong ground motion. If 4.1, you see that it is a little bit bigger than, its signature is little bit bigger than the motion that is produced in the magnitude of 3.1, right? All right. If it is 5.1, you see that it's little bigger than 5.5. These are all actually recorded uh, incidents. If it is 7, so you know that, I mean, you see that it's a bigger signal, right? And over here, you see that it's much more bigger. So it's very strong ground motion. You see that if the magnitude is bigger, the ground motion will be more stronger, and it will be having more pronounced duration, right? That can produce more damage as compared to the smaller earthquake, as, as compared to the strong ground motion those are produced during the smaller earthquakes, right? So this is very important. Initially, if the magnitude is 7, it may affect the areas those are at 100 kilometers, right? If the magnitude is like 5, it may not affect the areas at 100 kilometers, right? So this is pretty much clear that the initial magnitude of the ground motion is also very important for the predictive relationships. Similarly, you can prepare the spectras of those ground motion. I mean, those ground motions produced during the different earthquakes. Definitely, the response spectra will also be bigger, right? So response spectra will also be bigger and more you can say more having more bandwidth. So over here you see that this is for the 3.1 magnitude, and you see that its amplitude. You see the amplitude, it's very small. It is the spectral velocity, centimeters per second. And you see that as the magnitude is getting increased, the peak is getting increased, right? And the flatness of the curve is also getting increased. So the span of the strong ground motion will be more. All right. So then the distance effect. As we know that if the distance is getting increased, the ground motion's intensity will be decreased. right? So this is the normal, aspect of ground motion. Just like if you throw a stone in the water and there will be ripple marks produced, and those ripple marks will be getting increased, and you will see that the vibrations those will be produced on the surface of the ground, they will get flatter and flatter as the distance is getting increased, and at some point from that particular point, the you I mean the motion will be ceased, or the surface level will, you cannot notice that there was a kind of ripple marks those were produced because of the throwing of a stone into the water. So it means its effect is limited up to certain distance. Similarly, if an earthquake is triggered, its effect will be limited to a certain distance. If a magnitude 5 earthquake is triggered, it may be felt at 50 kilometer from the from away from the epicenter, and maybe it will not be felt at the distance of 100 kilometer from the epicenter. And if the earthquake magnitude is 7, then it might be felt at the 200 kilometers, right? So these two things are very important: the distance effect, and also the you can say the magnitude effect. Now, what kind of distance we need to take from our site to the earthquake source? This is very important thing. Actually, what you are supposed to do, generally we take the epicenter distance, right, where the earthquake is triggered. Let's suppose earthquake is this is the epicenter, and this is the focus, for example, right? So usually we take this distance, epicentral distance, right? Sorry for the extended line, but there are many other possibilities. If you see that there might be some other possibilities in terms of like, if we need to define the earthquake, fault plane, area of fault plane. Let's suppose this is the area of fault plane. Do you see that? This is the extension. You see that this is the area of the fault plane, and this is very possible. If sometime earthquake will trigger over here, some of the events will show earthquake is triggered here, some of the events will be earthquake is triggered here. So in this way, this is actually a fault plane, and anywhere the earthquake can be triggered, right? So it means there are different possibilities to define the distance of a source to site. Like if this would be the shortest distance. You see that R5 is the shortest distance, and you see that you can see R1 is a kind of longest distance, and that is from the hypocenter. Let's suppose earthquake is triggered over here. Then we can have R2. You see that R2, that is from here. So this is the epicentral distance. We can take the epicentral distance, that's fine. And we can also take the hypocentral distance. That is within the subsurface, right, from that particular side. This is possible. And then we can also have shortest distance. This is the shortest distance. So there are many possibilities. And there is another distance, that is R3. That is from the high stress zone. This is the high stress zone. You see that? So that is actually for the future reference. We might be expecting the earthquake triggered at this high spot zone, and then we will be having the epicenter of this earthquake over here, right? The surface projection of that particular high stress zone. So there are number of possibilities. What kind of distance we are going to take? This is all depend upon the if we know the complete history of that particular earthquake source, then based on that its geometry, we can find out what kind of distance we are going to take for the site to source distance, right? So we can also involve some statistics over there. How many earthquakes were triggered at what point, and what was the magnitude of that? So based on that, we can define the different distances. But for the simplicity, we just take the epicentral distance. So wherever the stronger earthquake was triggered along that particular source, we need to know its focus and then the epicenter, and we just take the epicentral distance, right? So this is the normal practice. But for research purpose, you can define different other source to site distances as well based on the geometry of the source. All right, so this is the data earthquake data based on some records, and you see that the as the distance is getting increased, right? As the distance is getting increased from the source, the ground motion amplitude is decreased. This is the maximum horizontal acceleration value, right? So it is getting decreased, and these records are related to the measurement on different type of materials like rock, stiff soil, and soft soils. So you see that on the stiff soil, these are the records you see, and on the soft soil you see the records are denoted by this thing, and on the rock you see the records are like this. So apparently it is clear that the records on the, you can say, the initial amplitude was also very low as compared to the as compared to the record those are related to the soft soil. You see that these are the soft soils record. So in soft soil, the initial amplitude will be more, and definitely the duration of the strong ground motion will be more. But in all of the cases, you see that the amplitude of the ground motion is getting decreased as the distance is getting increased from the source to a particular point. I guess it is clear. All right, so now how to formulate the predictive relationships? Because we must have some sort of relationships. We already know that by increasing the distance, the motion will be getting decreased, and by increasing the ground motion, by increasing the magnitude of an earthquake, the motion will be more stronger, and it will be felt at larger distance. So these are the facts, those are actually known to us, but we need to quantify. We need to quantify these parameters so that we can compute the estimated values at particular location about a particular earthquake at a particular distance. So the proper design of earthquake resistant structures and facilities requires estimation of the level of ground shaking to which they will be subjected. So level of shaking is most conveniently described in terms of strong ground motion parameters, right? So now we need to develop the predictive relationships, and these are the guidelines. If you check the relationship, it should have these kind of parameters. You see that first of all, there are, I mean, how you can predict, how you can develop the predictive relationship. So what kind of parameter you are going to determine? This is like log of y. Log of y means y is actually the parameter. Any parameter like acceleration. It could be acceleration, it could be velocity, or it could be displacement, right? I'm really sorry for the extended lines. I don't know how does it happen. Most of the time, whenever I use this tool to draw something, it creates these kind of extensions. Anyhow, so this is number one is the parameter that you are going to predict. So it could be acceleration, velocity, or displacement. Then you have some other constants C1, C2, C3, C5, C6, 7. These are some kind of constants. Those will be depending upon the site conditions as well. Then you have m, then m again with some exponential power, and then you have r, and then m and c, and then you have like then again r, and then some function related to source, and some function related to site. So this is a kind of a guideline or the guided formula that we are going to develop, we are going to use to develop the predictive relationship. So you just need to understand what are these things. So m is actually the magnitude. Two things are very important over here. M is the magnitude, and r is the distance. It means what will be the value of the strong ground parameter at a particular distance from you of your site from the source, and the magnitude, what was the magnitude of that earthquake that was triggered at the I mean triggered in the previous history. So you are taking that earthquake as a controlling earthquake to find out the amplitude parameter that can be developed at your site if same kind of earthquake is repeated again, right? So basically, the composition of this formula having M is related M and R. M and R are two components on the basis of that the strong ground motion is actually measured. So there are constants. Constants means site. What type of site is that, right? And what are the different constants over there related to the site conditions, like if it is a soil, if it is a rock, or it is a kind of stiff soil, loose soil, if it is rock, if is it weathered or not weathered, or what type of it is, right? So then you have other constants like source. What kind of source is that? Stochastic fault, thrust fault, point source, linear source, or volumetric source. And then site. What is the conditions on the site? Each site is a kind of dam. Each site is a kind of a bridge, a highway. And then what is the site conditions, like stiff soil is there, hard soil is there, hard rock is there. So these are all kind of things. Those you need to know about your area, and then the seismicity, and then how far is your site from the source. So all this kind of information is given over here. This is what I already discussed. So go through this paragraph. So now we are going to talk about the amplitude parameters. How we can predict the amplitude parameters based on the known history. So these predictive relationships are also called as attenuation relationships, right? Attenuation relationships. So attenuation relationships could be in terms of amplitude parameters, those could be in terms of frequency content parameters, and those could be in terms of duration parameters, right? So over here you can see that first of all how to determine the peak acceleration. Peak acceleration. So we already talked about the peak acceleration, but this is now we're going to use the for the prediction. Over here you see that in 1981 Campbell used worldwide data to develop an attenuation relationship for the mean PHA peak horizontal acceleration for sites within 50 km of the fault rupture in magnitude 5.0 to 5.7 earthquakes. Now this is very important. First of all, you need to define what type of data you are using, right? So Campbell used worldwide data, right, for the earthquakes, right, having magnitude 5.0 to 7.5, and if your site is within the 50 kilometer of that source, then this relationship is valid, otherwise it is not. So there are conditions, right? We need to apply some conditions. So this is the worldwide data, right? So we can apply it in our area as well, right? So this is the formula: natural log of PHA, G value. So this is G value, peak horizontal acceleration is equal to 4.14. This is C. You see, this is actually the C value for the constant. This is also C. This is also C. And you see that there is magnitude, and then you have the distance, and then again magnitude. So what you are going to do, you just need to know how to plug in the values in this formula, and then you can come up with the answer. So you need to know the R. So at how much distance your site is located from the epicenter, you can just put the value of R here. Then you need to put the value of magnitude, and then you will come up with some sort of answer, right? So it has limitations. Limitation is that 5.0 to 7.5, 7.7 earthquakes magnitude it will work, and the site should be within the 50 kilometers of the fault rupture, or you can say near the epicenter within the 50 kilometers. All right. So here M is the local magnitude or surface wave magnitude for magnitude less than or greater than 6. Respectively, R is the closest distance to the fault rupture in kilometers. So in this relatively simple attenuation relationship, which represented the state of the art in 1981. All right. So then in 1994, Campbell and Bozornia use worldwide accelegrams for earthquakes of moment magnitude. यहाँ पे कौन सा यूज हुआ था? लोकल मैग्नीट्यूड. Now he is using the moment magnitude scale with the range of 4.7 to 8.1. It means it has a wide range of application, right? So the relationship is like that. Now he has more information, so relationship is little bit complicated, but still you should be able to find out your answers. I can give you some of the questions related to these formulas, so you must be able to solve these equations. So you just need to plug in the value of MW and R, and other constants are already defined, right? So in this way you will come up with the answer. So this answer will be in gals. Gals is also a unit of gravity, right? So you need to know the conversion factor, how you can convert the gals into G value. All right. So here there are some more functions we need to define, like f. F is a function, and then you have like SSR. The detail is given in the book. So from there you can also see that what are these functions. Like you see that SSR is actually is equal to 1 for soft rock sites, sedimentary deposits of tertiary age, and SHR. SHR is 1 for hard rocks, right? Similarly, the function F is 0 for the strike slip faults and normal faulting, and 1 for the reverse fault. So the values are given in the at the page of 89. You can read out that. So similarly, you can have another peak acceleration formula that is given by Boer et al. 1993, and he used the data of Western North American earthquakes only. So it means that is only applicable to the local level for the Western United States. So that is not global. So this is how you develop the predictive relationships, right? So you see over here the information is given. You see the constants information, and F is the function of fault. All right, and this is Boer et al. Relationship for North American earthquakes, and the distance is 100 kilometer. Within the 100, your site should be within the 100 kilometer. Here you have also B1, B2, and other kind of parameters. All are defined. You See, all are defined here. There are also additional tables, those are given to define these relationships. The most important thing is what is the distance r of your site from the epicenter of an earthquake and how much magnitude was recorded in the past by by that particular earthquake, right? So there are other relationships given in the book, and some of them are for the velocity, some of them are for the acceleration, some of them are for the displacement. So over here you see that acceleration is most important thing. So you see that this relationship is based on Campbell and Bezonia, right? And you see that initially for the smaller earthquake the amplitude is less, right? And initially for the big larger earthquake the amplitude is more. Similarly, so their relationships are like that. So at a particular value you see that the distance is getting increased, the motion is getting pronounced, but overall the amplitude of the motion is getting increased by increasing the distance. Over here, Boer et al. So this is the for the western U.S. states. So you see the relationship is little bit, trends are little bit different. Sorry, the trends are same, but their shape is little bit different. Similarly, Toro et al. Relationship you see over here. So it's also a kind of similar trend to this one. You see that, and this is another type of Young's et al. 1988 relationship. So in all of the relationship, two things are very clear. If initially the magnitude is more, the amplitude of the ground motion will be more. It will be felt at longer distance, right? And the other thing, if the distance is getting increased from your side, the amplitude of the ground motion parameter is getting decreased. So you can prepare similar kind of relationship for the displacement and also for the velocity parameter as well. Similarly, you can also have the frequency content parameters prediction. So over here you see that the predominant time period. This side is predominant time period, and over here is the distance from the causative fault, right? So what's happening? Distance is getting increased, the predominant time period is kind of getting increased. For smaller values the amplitude is low, and then for the greater values, greater earthquakes, the amplitude is getting increased, right? So you see that the amplitude is getting the predominant time period is getting increased. You see that for the different earthquakes. Now I am over here. I am also asking you a question. That is very important question, and you are supposed to answer that question. And if you answer the question, you will get the bonus points. So in every lecture, I supposed to ask a couple of questions or at least one question. So over here, you see that the trends of predominant time period. The most as the distance is getting increased, the predominant time period is getting increased. All right. So question is that अगर predominant time period increase हो रहा है distance के साथ, तो क्या damage करने की जो property है वो भी increase होगी उस earthquake के? नहीं, ये जो distance है सारे earthquakes के लिए ये increase हो रहा है, ठीक है? increase होने के साथ साथ क्या हो रहा है कि predominant time period बढ़ रहा है। तो क्या प्रीडोमिनेंट टाइम पीरियड के बढ़ने की वजह से क्या डैमेज जो है वो प्रोड्यूस जो है वो ज्यादा होगा फिर, या नहीं होगा? या होगा तो कितना होगा? या इस ग्राफ से आपको क्या चीज जो है वो इंडिकेट हो रही है कि अपेरेंटली आप देख रहे होंगे कि जो एम्पलीट्यूड है प्रीडोमिनेंट टाइम पीरियड की वो ज्यादा हो रही है या वैल्यू ज्यादा हो रही है। इसका मतलब क्या है कि आप समझ रहे होंगे डैमेज भी ज्यादा प्रोड्यूस होगा। तो क्या ये चीज ठीक है या नहीं है? ठीक है, इसके बारे में आपने मुझे जवाब देना है कि प्रीडोमिनेंट टाइम पीरियड बढ़ने से क्या ये हम इनडायरेक्टली ये कह सकते हैं कि वो जो अर्थक्वेक है ग्रेटर डिस्टेंस के ऊपर वो ज़्यादा डैमेज प्रोड्यूस करेगा एज कम्पेयर टू दी locations where the epicenter distance is small from the causative fault. तो क्वेश्चन समझ आ गया आपको, ये आपने इसका आंसर देना है, ठीक है। All right. Similarly, we can also predict the Fourier spectra for for the ground motion. So you see that सबसे पहले आप ये देखेंगे एम्पलीट्यूड अगर मैग्नीट्यूड कम है तो फोरियर स्पेक्ट्रा की एम्पलीट्यूड कम है, ठीक है। मैग्नीट्यूड ज़्यादा हो रही है तो फोरियर स्पेक्ट्रा की एम्पलीट्यूड ज़्यादा हो रही है, ठीक है। सो दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग एंड बिकॉज जो स्ट्रॉन्ग ग्राउंड मोशन है वो आपकी इंक्रीज करती है जब आपकी अर्थक्वेक की मैग्नीट्यूड ज़्यादा होती है। यहाँ पे देख लें और यहाँ पे देख लें, ठीक है। तो इसी तरह से आप फोरियर स्पेक्ट्रा भी बना सकते हैं, इसकी डिटेल भी गिवन है, हम इसको ज़्यादा डिटेल में डिस्कस नहीं करते, जस्ट आप इसको याद रखें कि ये भी मतलब इस तरह से आप फोरियर स्पेक्ट्रा जो है वो प्रिपेयर कर सकते हैं, राइट। Similarly, you have another very important thing, that is the Vmax over Amax ratio. This is a very important parameter, Vmax over Amax. If you remember your previous understanding, उसके मुताबिक अगर आपके पास लेट्स को दो टाइम हिस्ट्रीज हैं, एक है आपके पास एक्सेलरेशन, ठीक है। इस तरह से लेट्स सपोज आपके पास ये एक्सेलरेशन का फोरियर स्पेक्ट्रम है, तो यहाँ पे जो पीक आएगी उसका एक टाइम पीरियड होगा, ठीक है। ये एक्सेलरेशन है। सिमिलरली आपके पास उसी ग्राउंड मोशन का जो है ना वो वेलोसिटी का स्पेक्ट्रा भी है। वेलोसिटी का स्पेक्ट्रा जो है वो कुछ इस तरह से है, ठीक है। अब इसमें देखेंगे कि ये जो टाइम है ये डिफरेंट होगा, ये टाइम पीरियड क्या होगा, ये डिफरेंट होगा, ठीक है। यहाँ पे सॉरी ये आपके पास है वेलोसिटी, ठीक है, ये आपके पास है वेलोसिटी। तो same kind of ground motion can have different peaks for velocity and acceleration and they will be having different time period, ठीक है। तो टाइम पीरियड मुख्तलिफ है तो इसकी फ्रिक्वेंसी भी मुख्तलिफ होगी। इसका मतलब क्या है कि जो एक्सेलरेशन है उसकी पीक किसी और टाइम पीरियड के साथ मुंसलिक होगी, ठीक है। और अगर आप उसको इंटीग्रेट करें तो वेलोसिटी की वैल्यू लेते हैं तो वेलोसिटी की पीक जो है किसी और टाइम पीरियड के साथ होगी, तो इसका मतलब क्या है उसके उससे रिलेटेड उसकी फ्रिक्वेंसी भी डिफरेंट होगी। तो दोनों पैरामीटर्स की फ्रिक्वेंसी जो है वो एक नहीं हो सकती किसी एक सेम अर्थक्वेक के लिए, ठीक है। जो आपकी वेलोसिटी होती है उसकी फ्रिक्वेंसी और होती है और आपके जो आपकी डिस्प्ले जो आपका एक्सेलरेशन होता है उसकी फ्रिक्वेंसी कुछ और होती है, राइट। So this is the reason why we also need to find out the Vmax over Amax ratio. Vmax over Amax ratio जो है इसका फायदा क्या है, इसका फायदा ये है कि इससे हम एक कॉमन टाइम पीरियड निकाल लेते हैं कि उस ग्राउंड मोशन का कॉमन टाइम पीरियड क्या है। वो कैसे कि Vmax और Amax को डिवाइड करें, तो Vmax जो है वो मीटर पर सेकंड होता है और Amax क्या होता है, मीटर पर सेकंड स्क्वायर। तो जो आंसर आएगा वो आपका आएगा T/2 पाई, ये आएगा, ये एक्चुअली इक्विवेलेंट है T/2 पाई, ये फार्मूला है। तो जो आपका आंसर आएगा वो सेकंड्स में आएगा, जवाब आपका किस में आएगा, सेकंड्स में। सो इन दिस वे वी विल बी हैविंग अ कॉमन टाइम पीरियड ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर ग्राउंड मोशन, क्योंकि दोनों पैरामीटर डिफरेंट टाइम पीरियड के साथ मुंसलिक हैं, उनकी फ्रिक्वेंसीज डिफरेंट हैं। तो जब आप उसकी रेशियो ले लेते हैं, वी मैक्स की वैल्यू पढ़ लें फिर ए मैक्स की पढ़ लें, दोनों को डिवाइड कर दें तो आपके पास आंसर जो है वो टाइम में आ जाएगा। उसकी रेशियो जो है वो एक तरफ उसकी रेशियो होगी, दूसरी तरफ ये 2 पाई जो है ना वो इस तरफ जाके मल्टीप्लाई हो जाएगा और आपके पास क्या आ जाएगा, टी आ जाएगा। टी क्या है, टाइम पीरियड। सो यू हैव फार्मूला फॉर दैट। अब वो जो फार्मूला है रॉक के लिए डिफरेंट है और सॉइल के लिए डिफरेंट है, ये ऑलरेडी बुक के अंदर गिवन है। तो पेज नंबर जो है ना इसका है 94, वहाँ पे जो है ना वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स रेशियो को डिस्कस किया गया। तो इससे आप क्या कर सकते हैं, आप एक कॉमन जो है वो फ्रीक्वेंसी फाइंड आउट कर सकते हैं। सो दिस इज वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स जो है ये फ्रीक्वेंसी कंटेंट पैरामीटर है, क्योंकि जब आप क्योंकि इसका फार्मूला वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स इज इक्वल टू T/2 पाई है, ठीक है। तो इससे आप क्या निकालेंगे, टाइम पीरियड, और टाइम पीरियड से आप क्या निकाल लेंगे, आपके पास आ जाएगा फ्रीक्वेंसी आ जाएगी। तो ये फार्मूला ऑलरेडी गिवन है आपके मैग्नीट्यूड एंड डिस्टेंस डिपेंडेंस ऑफ वी मैक्स ओवर ए मैक्स के लिए। कि मैग्नीट्यूड और डिस्टेंस डिपेंडेंस के लिए आप देखें रॉक साइड्स के लिए ई एस प्लन E40 एम क्या है मैग्नीट्यूड और आर क्या है 0.12 ये भी उसकी एक्सपोनेंशियल फॉर्म है। उसके बाद सॉइल्स के लिए ई 0.15 एम है और आर जो है 0.23 है। राइट, ये प्रिडिक्शन के लिए कि वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स की जब आपने प्रिडिक्शन करनी है तो वो किस फार्मूले से करेंगे। इससे रिलेटेड आपके पास है एग्जाम्पल 3.8। दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एग्जाम्पल, तो इस तरह के क्वेश्चन भी एग्जाम में आ सकते हैं। ठीक है, तो ये एग्जाम्पल है, इसमें क्या करना है आपने वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स जो है वो रेशियो फाइंड आउट करनी है। तो इसका फार्मूला क्या है? अच्छा, वो पहले कह रहा है कि एस्टिमेट द वैल्यूज ऑफ वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स दैट वुड बी ऑब्जर्व्ड एट रॉक एंड सॉइल साइट्स। क्या करना है? वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स की वैल्यू फाइंड करनी है। वुड बी, दैट वुड बी ऑब्जर्व्ड एट रॉक एंड सॉइल साइट्स 40 किलोमीटर फ्रॉम द सोर्स ऑफ अ 40 kilometer from the source of a 6 magnitude earthquake located near the Loma Prieta earthquake। अब वो कह रहा है कि लोमा प्रेटा अर्थक्वेक सोर्स है और उससे वो 40 किलोमीटर अवे है और मैग्नीट्यूड है 6। ठीक होगा। अब इसमें प्रिडिक्शन करनी है। प्रिडिक्शन करने के लिए सबसे पहले हमें पता होना चाहिए कि एक्चुअल वैल्यूज क्या हैं। अगर आप गिलरॉय रॉक नंबर 1 3.1 एग्जांपल देखें, उसके मुताबिक वो कह रहा है कि रॉक और सॉइल के ऊपर जो है ना लोमा प्रेटा क्विक का, उसमें आप देखेंगे कि वो 21.8 किलोमीटर पे है रॉक साइड, और जो सॉइल साइड है वो 22.2 किलोमीटर पे, और वहाँ पे अर्थक्वेक आया था 7.1। ये रिकॉर्डेड हिस्ट्री है। जब आपके पास रिकॉर्डेड हिस्ट्री होगी तो आप प्रिडिक्शन करेंगे ना। तो ये वैल्यूज आपको गिवन है और आपने फाइंड क्या करनी है, इस किलोमीटर डिस्टेंस के ऊपर रॉक और सॉइल पे आपने मैग्नीट्यूड 6 अर्थक्वेक के लिए करना है। तो इसका सिंपल फार्मूला है। फार्मूला ये है कि आपने जो है वो इसको वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स पहले फाइंड करें। वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स जो है ना रॉक साइड के लिए वो आती है 0.078 सेकेंड। ये कैसे आई? ये आप इसकी जो इनिशियल टाइम इट इज गिवन है 3.1 एग्जांपल में इसी चैप्टर की, उसके अंदर आप इसकी वैल्यूज पढ़े, वी मैक्स की वैल्यू पढ़ लें और ए मैक्स की पढ़ें। उसको जब आप डिवाइड करेंगे तो आपके पास ये वैल्यू आएगी, ये रॉक साइड के लिए। ठीक है, उसके बाद ये फार्मूला है ई की पावर एम, फिर उसके बाद आपके पास है आर की पावर 0.12, उसके बाद है आपके पास नॉन हिस्ट्री। नॉन हिस्ट्री में आपके पास 7.1, ये देखिए ये 7.1 मैग्नीट्यूड आपने यहाँ डाल दी। उसके बाद आर के लिए आपने डिस्टेंस ये है, आर का डिस्टेंस ये उसकी एक्सप्लेन पावर, ये नॉन है। ये जो नीचे वाला डिनोमिनेटर है दिस इज नॉन, तो इसके ऊपर वही फार्मूला है, लेकिन उसके अंदर आपने प्रिडिक्शन वाली वैल्यूज लिखनी है। ये देखिए 6 मैग्नीट्यूड और 40 किलोमीटर। जब आप इसको सॉल्व करेंगे तो आपके पास आंसर आएगा 0.04 सेकेंड। ठीक है, ये आपके पास वी मैक्स और ए मैक्स रेशो आ जाती है। जब वो मल्टीप्लाई करेंगे 40 डिस्टेंस के साथ, तो ज़ाहिर है कि बी मैक्स और ए मैक्स का जो टाइम है थोड़ा सा डिक्रीज हो गया क्योंकि डिस्टेंस इंक्रीज हो रहा है 0.054 सेकेंड। ये बी मैक्स ओवर ए मैक्स की रेशियो है। ठीक है, ये प्रिडोमिनेंट टाइम पीरियड नहीं है, ये बी मैक्स ओवर ए मैक्स की रेशियो है। इसके अगेंस्ट आप फ्रीक्वेंसी फाइंड कर सकते हैं। फॉर सॉइल साइट, सॉइल साइट के लिए जब आप रेशियो लेते हैं बी मैक्स और ए मैक्स की उसी एग्जांपल से, तो दैट वुड बी 0.124 सेकेंड। क्या आंसर है? 124 सेकेंड। अब इसमें भी वही चीज कि जो आपके पास नॉन वैल्यूज है वो नीचे होंगी और जो जो प्रिडिक्शन वाली वैल्यूज है वो ऊपर चली जाएंगी। ये देखिए इसका फार्मूला थोड़ा डिफरेंट था 0.1, ये देखिए ये फार्मूला डिफरेंट है। उसी फार्मूले को आपने सॉइल में ये ऊपर जो है ऊपर अननोन वैल्यूज के लिए और नीचे नॉन वैल्यूज के लिए, तो इसका आंसर आ जाएगा 0.12 सेकेंड। राइट, तो सॉइल साइड के लिए आपके पास है 0.12 सेकेंड। सो दिस इज हाउ यू कैन गेट द आंसर। वी मैक्स ओवर ए मैक्स रेशियो आप इस तरीके से फाइंड करेंगे, ये वाला फार्मूला उसमें यूज होगा। प्लीज डू नॉट हेजिटेट टू आस्क मी क्वेश्चंस इफ यू डू नॉट अंडरस्टैंड। All right, so then you got the predictive response spectra. You can also have the response spectra prediction, क्योंकि हम predictive relationships ले रहे हैं तो उसमें आप predictive response spectra कैसे find out करेंगे। एम्पलीट्यूड पैरामीटर हमने देखे, फ्रीक्वेंसी कंटेंट पैरामीटर we are talking about, इसमें देखेंगे आपके पास ये सारे डिफरेंट साइज्मोलॉजिस्ट हैं जिन्होंने ये रिलेशनशिप बनाए हैं। ये सेंट्रल यूएस के लिए है सॉफ्ट रॉक साइट्स के ऊपर, सॉफ्ट रॉक साइट्स के ऊपर। ठीक है, इट मीन्स के जो वेदर्ड रॉक्स होंगी, डिसइंटीग्रेटेड रॉक्स होंगी उसके लिए, और आपके पास जो मैक्सिमम मैग्नीट्यूड है 7.7 है और डिस्टेंस 200 किलोमीटर, उसके लिए स्पेक्ट्रल एक्सेलेरेशन बनाना है। ये साइट है, साइट का रिस्पॉन्स है। सो यू सी दैट के डिफरेंट रिसर्चर्स ने, पहली बात ये कि जो ग्राउंड मोशन है वो यू सी द स्पेक्ट्रा शेप इज अ काइंड ऑफ सिमिलर, लेकिन उसकी वैल्यूज डिफरेंट हैं। तो इसमें आप देख सकते हैं कि डिफरेंट रिसर्चर्स ने अपनी अपनी इक्वेशंस डेवलप की है, अपने पैरामीटर्स को डिफाइन किया है, तो उसकी बेस के ऊपर इनकी पीक्स डिफरेंट है। ठीक है, क्योंकि ये इनकी अपनी रिसर्च है, फार्मूलाज डिफरेंट हैं, एरिया एक है लेकिन उनके अपने फार्मूलाज हैं, अपने कॉन्स्टेंट्स हैं, इसलिए ये जो है वो उनकी पीक्स डिफरेंट आ रही है। बट वी नीड टू डिसाइड कि वेयर वी आर, व्हाट इज अवर साइट एंड व्हाट काइंड ऑफ पैरामीटर्स आर देयर एंड व्हाट रिलेशनशिप वी आर यूजिंग। ठीक है, वो ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट, हमें इस तरह के रिलेशनशिप डेवलप करने की ज़रूरत है पाकिस्तान के डिफरेंट एरियाज के लिए। ठीक है, ऑल राइट। So this is how already discussed the response spectra of for different magnitude। आप देखेंगे ये आपके पास 3.1 मैग्नीट्यूड है, और स्पेक्ट्रल एक्सेलेरेशन है वो आप ये देखेंगे आपके पास जो है वो ओवरऑल जो है मैग्नीट्यूड बढ़ेगी, तो एम्पलीट्यूड जो है वो स्पेक्ट्रा की वो बढ़ेगी। ठीक हो गया। सो दिस इज अबाउट द प्रिडिक्टिंग ड्यूरेशन, कि ड्यूरेशन को आप किस तरह से प्रिडिक्ट कर सकते हैं। ठीक है, तो इसमें आप ये देखेंगे ये आपके पास ब्रैकेटेड ड्यूरेशन है। इनिशियली कोई भी अर्थक्वेक जो है उनके ड्यूरेशन देखें, ये डिफरेंट मैग्नीट्यूड्स के ये डिफरेंट मैग्नीट्यूड्स के अर्थक्वेक्स के इवेंट्स हैं, और ये इस तरफ इसके एपिसेंट्रल डिस्टेंसेस हैं। और आप ये देखेंगे जो इफेक्टिव ड्यूरेशन है वो भी आहिस्ता आहिस्ता डिक्रीज करती है जैसे जैसे डिस्टेंस इंक्रीज करता है। ठीक है, तो वहाँ पे जो इफेक्टिव ड्यूरेशन है या ब्रैकेटेड ड्यूरेशन, ये ब्रैकेटेड ड्यूरेशन है, टोटल ड्यूरेशन नहीं है। टोटल ड्यूरेशन ज़्यादा भी हो सकती है लेकिन वो ज़रूरी नहीं कि वो डैमेज प्रोड्यूस करे, लेकिन जो ब्रैकेटेड ड्यूरेशन दैट इज द काइंड ऑफ इफेक्टिव ड्यूरेशन। और इफेक्टिव ड्यूरेशन जो है उसकी वैल्यू डिक्रीज करेगी, क्योंकि वैल्यू डिक्रीज करेगी तो डैमेज करने की जो सलाहियत है वो कम हो जाएगी। ठीक हो गया, तो डिस्टेंस इंक्रीज होगा तो इफेक्टिव ड्यूरेशन की वैल्यू डिक्रीज करेगी, लेकिन इनिशियली वो ज़्यादा होगी ग्रेटर मैग्नीट्यूड के लिए। जैसे ये मैग्नीट्यूड है, अब देखिए इनिशियल वैल्यू काफ़ी ज़्यादा है, इसकी इनिशियल वैल्यू काफ़ी ज़्यादा है। इसके लिए हमने रिलेशनशिप्स भी पिछली दफ़ा हमने डिस्कस किए थे कि डिफरेंट जो अर्थक्वेक्स की मैग्नीट्यूड है वो डिफरेंट ड्यूरेशन की ग्राउंड मोशन प्रोड्यूस करती हैं। ग्रेटर मैग्नीट्यूड है तो ग्रेटर ड्यूरेशन प्रोड्यूस होगी। ठीक है, so this is all about for the lecture part A, and I will upload the lecture part 2 very shortly. First you are supposed to concentrate on this lecture, and if you have any question you are very welcome to ask. Thank you very much.